We're not meant to sit on a beach and just drink drinks and enjoy the sunset. Like, while that's enjoyable and it creates a moment of joy and experience with your spouse or significant other or your family or whatever, it's not what you're meant to be doing. If you're not actually accomplishing something, if you're not actually doing something that brings value to somebody besides yourself, this is for me, and this is for Scott Abbott, okay? I don't find joy in just satisfying Scott Abbott. That is what I've learned. I find joy when I see that I can bring value to the life of my spouse, my kids, my business partner, my franchisees, my coworkers, my employees, my board, the people that are in my universe.
All right. Welcome, Scott, to the Deeper Than Dough podcast.
Been looking forward to this.
Scott, you want to start with a few minutes of just your background?
Yeah, happy to do that. So I've been in France. Well, we can go back to the beginning, I suppose. May as well, right? Because it's all about the entrepreneurial journey, I suppose. Started a company when I was 15 selling fishing tackle.
Okay.
Quit my job at McDonald's. Decided I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And my dad is an entrepreneur and was an entrepreneur at the time as well. And him and I did a lot of freshwater fishing up in Canada, where I grew up.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've ever gone after big muskie. Have you ever heard of them, or northern pike? These are like 5 feet long fish.
Okay.
All freshwater lake kind of stuff.
Well, I've heard of the pike.
So maybe. Pike or muskie are just a bigger version of the pike. It is the apex predator of all freshwater.
Okay.
And big fish, big teeth. It's like a shark.
Is it like those the long snouts with a bunch of teeth?
That's an alligator gar.
Okay, I've shot some
those
of those.
Are in Florida. People bow fish for those frequently.
That's what I've done a lot of.
So think of that, but not a long snout, just a big shark-like mouth.
Okay.
Just 3 sets of teeth. It's ugly and it's vicious and powerful. Anyways, it's like the ultimate fish to catch. It's the fish of 1,000 casts. You fish forever. You catch one of significant size in like 10 years of fishing.
Okay.
But they require a certain kind of tackle because it's big saltwater type tackle, like big foot long spinner baits and jerk baits and so forth. So anyways, my father and I did a lot of fishing for those, and he found these specific lures for them, and he said, why don't we sell these as a business? So I became a distributor of fishing tackle when I was 15 and a half. And as part of that beginning journey in entrepreneurship, I learned a lot of the most important skills of like, how do you sell? Mm-hmm. And how do you get past gatekeepers and businesses to talk to the decision makers, and also how do you take no for an answer or not take no for an answer, and knowing which one to take when, and pushing past maybe any insecurities I had as an individual at 15 and a half, 16, 17, 18, as you're kind of growing into adulthood. And that little business taught me so much about everything: cash flow, negotiating terms, dealing with owners. And I sold fishing tackle across at some point.
How are you selling it? I mean, this is either
slinging bait,
Amazon.
Man. No, back then I would drive up to the store, walk in. There was no cell phones, right? I would yellow page dial off a list of all the stores, or I would show up to a store and ask to speak to the owner. Often when I'd come in, they'd be like, well, that's great, but like, where's the owner? And I'm like, no, I own this company.
Yeah.
And I was like 5'5", and 16 years old.
Yeah.
And people would, but you know what? It was so interesting because so many people who owned a business saw a young entrepreneur, and they saw themselves in me, and they literally gave me the time of day that no one else would.
Yeah.
And so started selling tackle right across Canada, from Nova Scotia to Vancouver, BC. Most of my customers were in Manitoba and Ontario, where muskie and big pike are found. And by the time I served an LDS mission when I was 20. So in those 4 years, I built this little business to be something that was actually decent, and I did it through high school. Funny story is I failed high school. Well, I actually technically failed it twice. Grade 12. The second time I failed, I convinced the principal to give me an entrepreneurial credit for having run this business the whole time while I was in high school. And he gave me the half credit I needed to graduate. And I made it into the commencement speech because he was so proud that some of his students had built a business. Anyways, that was kind of a cool experience. I served an LDS mission from 20 to 22 in Brussels, Belgium, and France. And coming home, realized a few things. One, up until that point in time, I never thought education was important, which could tell, given I failed high school, grade 12 twice. But after serving for those 2 years and learning new language and new cultures and stuff, I decided I wanted to pursue an education. And so when I came home, my little business, which had been run by my sister and some family while I was gone, was still functioning, but it really nothing much had happened. They were kind of filling orders. They weren't growing the business; they were maintaining. And I decided I wanted to do an undergrad at University of Manitoba in business and finance. And
was it hard to get in with your wonderful grades?
No, it actually wasn't at all. It was actually quite easy. University of Manitoba is kind of like a UVU here.
Okay.
Everyone gets in. Getting to the business school, you'd have to do after a year and a half of doing your generals, and then if you have a GPA at that point, you could get in. And I was able to do that and graduated from University of Manitoba. But through that whole experience, I learned a number of different things. One, that education is actually very, very valuable when applied. So taking a business degree where you're learning a lot of new things, but then taking it and directly using it in the business I was operating at the time was like super valuable. And I ran a company with my father. It was a concept that got a lot of traction, a lot of attention. I won a bunch of awards for my involvement there in entrepreneurship and at the university and in Manitoba and in Canada. But the business failed ultimately. And through that failure, there was this moment that put me on the path that I'm on today that I'm forever grateful for. Learned so much around everything around communication and sales and operations and cash flow and raising capital and who to raise money from, which ultimately made the business go bankrupt. We raised money from the wrong people, wealthy billionaires. Some of the most financially off people in Canada were our backers, but also the most powerful, all the best lawyers, all the, if something went wrong, you were going to lose. There was no way through that. And we ultimately lost the company to them and I had to move on. And in that moment in time, my co-founder, Chad Jones, who you've met, I've known him since he was 11. We've been best friends forever.
Was he in the fishing business too?
No, but it was just me and my sister actually. Okay. But we had a basketball team that my company sponsored. So we always would wear it was called Bass Brothers Fishing Tackle Network. Or distributors, sorry. It was a company name. And we had one of our biggest companies was Sluggo. It's a special bait. And so all the basketball guys would wear these Sluggo jerseys as their basketball, and I played a lot of basketball growing up, a lot. That's one of the reasons why I really failed. It was more to do with basketball than business, frankly. I was at the gym playing hoops constantly. But so Chad and I were at this friend's wedding and we were talking and he was talking about how expanding this business from one location in Edmonton, Alberta to other cities failed. And my father had sold franchises for a while for a concept called Koi Japan. It was like a Japan teriyaki, teppanyaki kind of thing. Just a kind of fast food casual concept. And when he told me the concept when he was doing it, I was just so interested in, people all these big brands are actually owned by one operator, and they maybe own one or two locations, and they pay a franchise fee and there's a commission paid to the salesperson. My dad was just a salesperson. And the idea seems so novel, like a distributed network of business entrepreneurs running a big brand, getting all the benefits of scale, but down to that little location, and then bringing the American dream to so many people. It just seems so like novel. And I was probably like 16 or 17 when that was happening. And so when we were talking, I'm like, Chad, I think I know how to solve this problem. He's like, what? I said, we got to franchise it. And he's like, well, how do you franchise something? I said, I have no idea, but we're going to do it. And so I just come off this company failing. Okay. And I took a job at a large accounting firm called BDO Dunwoody and decided that I would develop this brand with Chad. And it was awesome. Like, put me in this whole trajectory of franchising. Five Star Painting quickly became one of the fastest growing companies in painting. And then in Utah, as we moved down, I moved down here to do my MBA at BYU. And while that happened, it just took off. We were selling franchises all over the place. We were so kind of forward thinking around the internet and how to acquire leads through digital marketing, because this is 2005, right? Yep. People were transitioning from paper to online. And that transition, we were early enough in that we dominated all searches for
Was that anything. What was the most value add to your franchisees was the leads? Because now you guys own a lead company, right? And you guys do that for several brands.
Yeah, I do own a lead company. It's called Pronexus. It does call center, so inbound, outbound, text, voice, chat, online scheduling for all home service companies. That's Pronexus. It's like the backbone, the entire thesis around what I saw as the big opportunity. Home services, operators in home services back then and even now often got the very first thing wrong. They couldn't answer the phone because they're too busy painting a house, doing an estimate. So if I could just master that, then businesses would take off. So we created this like centralization of technology and systems and lead generation and lead handling and customer experience. And we centralized all of that, and we let our franchisees just go out and operate.
And you guys are operating out of Springville?
Head office is in Springville, Utah. We've got offices in there, Boston, just south of Boston, a place called Attleboro.
Okay.
Another place just north of Atlanta, Georgia, and then Denver, Colorado. So we've got 4 offices really that we operate out of, and another one just north of Detroit, Michigan. So
and this is like home services companies like HVAC and plumbing, painting,
so
pest control.
We own 6 brands today, and 950 franchisees, territories, I should say, 550, 600 owners. We are in 3 specialty franchise concepts that are restoration, especially restoration, called Bio One, Packouts, and Textiles. And then we have a bathroom brand, a window coverings brand, and a pest control brand. So those are the 6 we own today. And then Pronexus is kind of the engine that drives all of that with our customer experience and lead gen.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it really has been, I think we've grown in the last 3 years 1,600%.
That's awesome.
So the pace
I just saw on, top 50 fastest growing businesses in Utah.
Yeah.
That you guys are on there.
I think we're number 10 or something, or 11 or something.
Like clear up there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Congrats on that.
Yeah, it's flying.
So you've had, and you've exited some of these businesses, right? Because I think you've been in a dozen franchisors. And I know some of this. I guess I didn't give the background. Scott's one of our investors and advisors in Securitydo. So if we succeed, it's because of Scott. If we fail, I guess it's because of me.
I like that kind of accountability. That's my favorite kind. Yeah, I've sold a number of companies in franchising and in other businesses as well. I think I've had 11 transactions at this point. On the sell side, on the buy side, I've purchased 7 or 8, I guess at this point. Founded 20 plus companies. The one thing I'm probably the most proud of in my entire entrepreneurial journey is that of the companies that I have owned, founded, started, only one has actually failed.
And that was the first one in Canada? Is that,
no.
Or is this
that was my dad's father. I worked with him. It did fail. I wouldn't take full ownership. I owned a small piece of it because I bought in as an investor and I operated with them. But of companies I've started or run with my partners, one has not made it, and it's I think I may have talked to you about my Christmas tree delivery company. Have I not told you the story?
Maybe you have.
It is hilarious. We were the largest Christmas tree delivery company in the world. We were delivering 50,000 plus Christmas trees all across North America, delivered in the house, set the tree up, put the star on, and out. And white glove service. And that's the only business that failed, not when I owned it, I sold it.
Okay.
And the buyer who helped co-found it with me, I decided to get exit and sold him the rest of my interest. It fell in his arms, but really the reason why was I wouldn't blame on him. It's just a business that you got one season to get it right.
Yeah.
Then you got to wait a whole other year. So if you get anything wrong, that feedback loop is so long to correct that financially you're in a bad position every year if you make a small mistake. And we've had moments where delivery truck steals 400 Christmas trees, all to be delivered in Boston, and the Grinch puts his hat on and he steals all the trees and he's gone, and it's like that wiped out all of our profit from 1 year. So stuff like that would happen, but it was a really cool business model.
So jumping into the joint fulfillment, you had a business that failed, you were part of it, a different business that you failed, you had a ton of other that are still successful, other successful exits. What's the kind of the end goal? And before the podcast, I started with, hey, this is about joint fulfillment. And you said, good, that's what I've been focused on for the last 30 years.
Yeah. So
tell me how that ties into the entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I'll, I haven't got it all figured out yet. So I don't pretend to come to this podcast with all the answers. I can maybe just share this with just an experience that I think is probably the most poignant in my entrepreneurial journey, where, I've had some exits that have been retirement style exits where I could officially just be done. And the first time that happened to me, exits before this time were, they were significant, but they weren't retirement money. They kind of increased the quality of living maybe, but they didn't put me in a position where I could maintain that quality of living for the rest of my life. But the first time that happened was when I sold my business to Neighborly. I owned a company called 5 Star Painting, this painting business we started in 2005 with Chad Jones. And when they purchased it, it was the first moment where I saw, a very large sum of money show up in my bank account overnight through a wire. And at that moment, everything just started changing in that I was no longer operating this business. It was now in the hands of another owner. I have a lot more capacity and time to do things, which I did take. And in the next 6 months, I would say were probably the hardest moments of my entire life. If I were to take all 48 years of living and tell you where were my darkest moments, the times where I were the most challenging, and I would tell you, it was after I sold my company and took a lot of money.
Okay, why was that? Was it kind of the identity of I'm no longer the 5 Star painting guy, or like lack of purpose?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Like, what is it? And I can bring it down to this, which has helped me commit to what I'm doing today, is that everyone, are meant to have purpose in this life. Like, we're not meant to sit on a beach and just drink drinks and enjoy the sunset. Like, while that's enjoyable and it creates a moment of joy and experience with your spouse or significant other or your family or whatever, it's not what you're meant to be doing. Mm-hmm. It is, a retreat, a way to kind of rethink through what you want to do with the future part of your life. But if you're not actually accomplishing something, if you're not actually doing something that brings value to somebody besides yourself, this is for me, and this is for Scott Abbott, okay? I don't find joy in just satisfying Scott Abbott. That is what I've learned. I find joy when I see that I can bring value to the life of my spouse, my kids, my business partner, my franchisees, my coworkers, my employees, my board, the people that are in my universe. If I can bring value to their life in some way, and that can come, and sometimes it's monetary, like I help them change their quality of life because they have a new financial lens to look through things. Sometimes it's through experiences. I'm sharing experiences I've had to help them overcome some challenge that they've had. Like, unless I'm doing that, I don't find satisfaction in this life. I'm not satisfied. Every time I've tried to stop working and play with the retirement game, I am ultimately dissatisfied, and I'm brought back to operating again, saying no. And I'm an active investor, which is how we've come to know each other, right? Yep. And I'm an active investor in a lot of companies. I couldn't number them all at this point. There's a lot of them. Some of them I'm active where I'm on the board. Some I'm silent where I just am an investor. But that doesn't bring enough satisfaction. That doesn't take 40 hours a week.
Yeah. And when I was kind of developing my mission statement, which is now Dirty Dose mission statement, it's all about being happy. But that wasn't enough because I'm like, well, what's to stop somebody from, is the perfect life just to smoke weed and live under a bridge by the beach? You could be happy doing that every day. And then that's when it's not just being happy, it's being fulfilled. So then we landed on maybe not even happy, but joy and fulfillment, right? Mm-hmm. So finding the joy, finding the fulfillment, and not waiting for those big exits. So now you've had the exits. It's not, and a lot of times I think I will be happy when, I'll be fulfilled when, and it's usually, a lot of times we'll tie it to a promotion or a salary or a residual investment, but it's like, well, you've had that. So then it's, okay, well, how do you have it along the way? Rather than I'm just going to be, I'm going to take more breaks when I go sell the next company. Yeah. So how do you, I guess on a day-to-day or a week-to-week, how do you balance that of I'm working hard, but I also don't want to work my whole life away saying, waiting for something to happen that may or may not happen. And it probably will happen, and you'll get a dopamine rush for getting some more money. Yeah. And that kind of fades away. So what do you do to be proactive, I guess?
As you were speaking, I was just thinking of a book that I read on goal setting that I'm sure you would know the name of it. Escape me at the moment. But it's out there in the reading universe at this point. Everyone talks about it. Okay. But it has to do with identity. Right? And because what you just mentioned, I think is really important. I set a goal for a financial transaction of a certain size that I wanted to obtain. That was very important to me. Once I've attained that goal, what now? Yep. So I did it. Well, what's left? I didn't think past that. So while I've always been a very goal-oriented person, I always have objectives. I've always been driven. It's the acronym used to describe our value system, DRIVE. We're all very driven, innovative, vital to our franchisees, enthusiastic, and real with each other. So when you're just driven to goals, but you don't understand that you have an identity that we may relate to that, then achieving a goal can leave you in a place where you no longer have goals because you've achieved them. And there's the now what moment. And that's where I was left in this 6 months of just kind of wallowing in too much time. But whereas if you actually have a value system, mission statement, or identity that it speaks to more about the journey of what you're doing, and then you create value for others and you for yourself in that process, then the goals are just marks in time along the way. It's not the destination. It is part of the journey that becomes important. So you mentioned the word balanced. I think it's a very interesting word to describe this entrepreneurial journey. I think, or just our time on this mortal realm. And I think it's almost impossible. In fact, I think it is to be perfectly balanced. If I were to go through, if I were to think of a wheel in my life, and I would put a spoke for everything that's important to me, whether it be my family, my soccer team, my coach, my church obligations, my time at work, for myself, as a husband or a spouse, as a father, as a son, as a grandson. You look at all those spokes, and they're all important. And I've done this exercise before, where I've kind of drawn out the line, represent these little pie charts on this wheel, and then I would go and I'd fill in each one on a scale of 1 to 10 of how well I'm doing in that area. Spirituality, I'm at a 5 right now out of 10, but I'm not 10 out of 10 on economically, and I'm a 7 out of 10 with my spouse, and I'm a 4 out of 10 with my kids, and it's this wheel that's all wonky. It's impossible. I've never done this exercise and seen it balanced. Ever. And so, but in doing it, I see where I can see that I'm out of balance, and so I go back to trying balancing that thing, and I found that I had to do things about integration. So you've met my son, actually. We were at a convention together in Philadelphia. And
I wanted to ask you about him in education, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, and my son Kieran, I do this with all my kids. I take one of my 5 kids with me on business trips. And I do that for 2 reasons. 3. 1, I want to develop my relationship with my son or my daughter. That's important to me. 2, I want to help them get educated. 3, I don't have enough time. So I have to integrate these moments with my kids with business or opportunities so that when I am traveling away from home, I can still connect meaningfully with the people that are really important to me. So, that's what I've found is that as I think through this wheel, if I were to think of them all individually, I kind of lose the battle. As I start integrating some of these things, like, for example, spirituality with doing yoga with my daughter who loves yoga. There's just a moment in time I can bring 2 relationships or 2 obligations or 2 responsibilities, if I will, together and create more joy in the journey, more balancing of my wheel of life, if you will. So I mean that's how I've handled it, I suppose. And I think
everybody relates to that of and then you work on one and you do get to a 9 or 10, and then another one kind of falls behind.
Inevitably,
But I guess just having that one, the practice. You go to the wheel, you fill it out, and then that allows you to realign. Or a lot of times we don't take that time.
Right.
To even know where we're at, so we don't know what we're shooting for.
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So, mental health, how's that played, importance in the entrepreneurship journey, like the ups and the downs, and then the follow-up question is, what do you do to be proactive, specifically with mental health?
I own a mental health clinic.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, one of my businesses. I have, I think, 9 or 10 therapists that work for me at this point.
Okay.
It's actually a franchise system called LA Mental Health.
Never mind. I do know that.
So I remember that. I have a location up in Lehigh, Utah here, and I have one I hope to open in Draper. And when we talk about mental health, this is an important topic to me because in my family there's some mental health issues that exist, like genetically, they're just there. I've had some ancestors that have had depression or bipolar issues, and I've seen it within different generations of our family. And I've seen what's happened to society, and the demands on the mental health industry have gone up. Like right now in Utah, for example, there's 2 times the demand as there is supply. There's not enough people to take care of the needs for those who have actually put their hand up and said, I need help. Mm-hmm. That is happening right now. I have endless demand for my therapists. I get calls every day. Some of them are very sad. I read some of them because I'm looking at how good my customer experience is with those who are engaging with my brand for my location, and I'm reading what they're saying, and I'm seeing the challenges that people are being faced with today that are very sad. So for me, there's two sides of this coin. One is I can help. Scott Abbott can help people in their mental health journey. And then two, I have to take care of myself, and taking care of myself is a lot easier, frankly, than addressing the needs of those around me and in our society. So to answer your question, I'll speak to myself personally. Coming back to that wheel, and you have done a lot of work on this because I follow you on Facebook, and you're always posting about how you go to the gym and you're working out. And you've shared some posts. I think you're very, very true to what ends up happening with a lot of people when they pursue, myself included in this area, when you pursue certain goals so much that you begin to become blind to the other needs. Some of those may be physical.
Yeah, I got up to that was me.
It's really easy.
I can wait. I'm just work.
That's right.
Health can wait.
Because something's got to give. Because an entrepreneurial journey often starts with 16, 18 hours a day kind of work. Mm-hmm. And how can you do all that and still go to the gym? Right? So for me, it's that. Like, if I'm out of balance, I have to get myself back in balance. And mental health isn't just one thing. Mental health is actually a view into the holistic element of who I am. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not balanced on my spirituality and my connection with my spouse and my children and my parents, with intaking intellectual stimulus through books and other methods, and attending seminars that may help me grow and learn. I am involved in a group called Entrepreneur Organization, where I have a peer group that I talk to every month, other entrepreneurs going through their own journey, and it's like group therapy for entrepreneurs. And frankly, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, you need to look at an EO or a YPO type organization to help along that area. But I would look at that and say that that's how I've managed my own mental health, right? And so when I was in a situation where my darkest time was mentally, I was fit. I had all the time. I'm running. I'm playing. I play soccer 2 or 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. I did my first marathon this summer with my daughter for fun. I'm physically fit. So I'm doing all those things, but yet I didn't get what I needed out of my professional career. That just went to a 0 out of 10. I just sold the company. I didn't find ways to engage that were meaningful for me. So now I'm unbalanced, and my mental health is now unbalanced. So what I got to do? Well, I filled that bucket with things that give me the value that I need and help me provide that to others. So that's how I've approached it. And with others, I think, honestly, I can say what is nice about, so I'm 48, and I came from a generation that mental health, the topic of mental health was taboo. If someone said that they were depressed or manic depressed or they had mental health issues, they're crazy. Yeah. And it was a taboo thing, and it's sad. But that's how the world kind of grew up in my generation. Today now, it is having more open dialogue and conversations that de-tabooize this element and put us in a position where we understand that mental health is just like emotional, spiritual, financial. It's just one more thing you got to keep yourself, understand that you have needs in and address. And I've found that has lent to more honest and open and real conversations with my children, my coworkers, my friends that actually help. Because the more you, like for you personally, Bennett, when you're on the internet and you're showing people your journey, you are actually normalizing the fact that it is quite common for entrepreneurs to gain weight when they do nothing but work all day long. And some people will do that, have that journey, and they'll beat themselves up, and they'll feel horrible about themselves because they put so much weight on. And now they move themselves in a state of depression. When if they can see someone else who has had that same journey, they can go, oh, then maybe I'm not a horrible person because this has happened to me. This happens to a lot of people, and I can now elevate out of it. So that's how I view, how do you help people? You actually talk about how hard the journey is in life, and you normalize things that for some people, they may think they're the only ones, and that somehow they should have shame over these things when really it's just part of the journey.
Yeah, recently when people ask me how I'm doing, I'll say it depends on the hour of the day, and everybody laughs Because it's like, I feel like everybody relates to that. You know, it's not even like there's good days and bad days. There's good hours and bad hours in the startup world. And everybody's like, oh yeah, that's so funny. Because you get a great phone call and your day starts hot, and then somebody quits or something, then it goes to shit. And then at the end of the day, something else happens. And anyways, I've noticed as I talk about bad days more, people are like, oh, I'm not the only one. And it's like, no, there's nobody that doesn't have those. So anyway, no, I like that a lot. Last question for us as we wrap up. It went by pretty quick. How do you want to be remembered? What's the legacy that Scott wants to leave behind?
Atomic Habits, James Clear. It was driving me crazy. How do I want to be left behind? How much time do I have here to give you this answer?
A minute or two, 3 or 4?
I need 3 minutes.
You could have 3.
Okay, 2017, my wife and I took our family to France to live there for 3 months.
Okay.
Took all our kids out of school, all 5 of them. And the reason why is that as an entrepreneur, I try to bring meaning to everything I do in a business. Mm-hmm. What's our mission? What are our values? What are our core principles? What's important to us? I'd never done that for my family. I've never taken that time to do that. So we go to France. I rent a castle in a small city called Eclassin.
Like a legit castle.
Like a castle.
All right.
We lived in the castle for a month. It was totally cool. And in the midst of vineyards in this beautiful place. And my kids are being exposed to new culture. Mm-hmm. And I did my mission in France, so I speak French fluently. The other kids are learning it. It's this amazing experience. And I asked my kids, listen, one of these days I need 4 hours of all your time. And I want to make sure that we all come together to talk about what's important to our family. Mm-hmm. I want to bring meaning to our family. And I told the story about, when you're driving down to the city, it's through this vineyard, very windy roads through this vineyard. And we're up in the top of where all the castles are built up on a hill. And the town's down in the valley where all the peasants used to live. And so every day we have to drive down this thing. It's a windy road, and it'd be very easy for us to just drive off the cliff and die. And so we started our meeting as a family on this topic. And I said there was an accident that occurred. I want you all to imagine this. We're all driving down that road, and I take a bad turn, and we all go off a cliff and we die. The whole family. It'd be horrible. It'd be reported over the world. Young family dies a miserable death, and it's tragic, and everyone wants to read about stuff like that. That's the news for you. And I said to them, I want you to imagine that 3 people showed up at your funeral to talk about each of you or our family. And I want you to answer or describe what they said about each of you or our family. So all the kids, all 5 of them, ranging from the age of 8 to the time 18, took the time to do this. And if you do that, you will know what you want to be remembered by. Mm-hmm. You will know not just you, your family, your wife, your kids, what do you want them to be remembered by? And so from that we gave life to this, our family mission value statement that exists on our wall, where the most important things to us are described. And one of the things that I just know that I want to be remembered by, if you were to say, Scott, it's your funeral, when they come to talk about you, what do you want them to say? And I would want people to stand up and talk about how I brought value to their lives. What did I do? What experience was I a part of that was important to them in any way? That could have been their business, their personal life, their marriage, their friendship, whatever it might have been. And I try and create moments. And I do this. I live up in Canada in the summers from June through end of August. So for those 2 months, I invite people to my cabin. Mm-hmm. And they're entrepreneurs, and they're friends, and there's family, and in some cases, large groups, small groups, and I try and create a moment for those people every year, and I've been doing it since I've owned this cabin. I bought it with this vision of I want to create moments for people that can be very meaningful, that'll never be forgotten. Important conversations being had in the evenings, experiencing something they've never seen before in their lives during the day, and that is what I live for. And so I actually do this with all my employees. They all fly up, all my brand presidents, we do a retreat together. I take care of them for 5 days, and I make sure those 5 days are filled with experiences that can be meaningful, impactful, and help develop our relationship. So for me, that's what I want to be remembered by. I mean, all the other stuff is fine. It's good. It's important.
That's really cool.
But that's it.
When I was doing the core values, mission statement, all of that, maybe 2 years ago, I did the same activity. But it was just me personally. I hadn't thought to do it with my my family. And I had these core values. And then when I put it in that, write your own obituary, a lot of those didn't make it. Because I was like, that actually isn't important if somebody remembered me by it. So anyways, it was really cool to kind of have everything set and then see how it changed when you're like, but what actually matters when I'm gone?
Yeah. Now you got young kids. Your oldest is how old?
6.
6. I mean, a little more difficult with a 6-year-old, right? But for you and your wife.
But yeah, I was going to say at least my wife.
You two know.
Yeah.
If you asked that question or did that exercise, you would know. Your kids will start to grow up into that.
So I need to do it with my wife now, and then as the kids grow up, then it's Anyways,
it's great. That's just like you would in your company when you have moments where you have to decide. It's a lens by which you look through to making decisions in your business. Having that for a family at the kitchen table, something happens and we look over and we go, well, with this experience, how do our values fit in here? And it creates clarity.
No, that's awesome. My brother did that as well, and anytime you go to his house, and he's older, he's 13 years older than me, Coptus, and then each, courage, and I don't know all of it, but I remember the acronym because it's just always been a part of their family. Maybe something like that in
That's
my
awesome.
family. So anyways, I appreciate you coming on, Scott.
Yeah.
Where can listeners connect with you? Are you on social media?
Oh, yeah, they could, I suppose.
5-Star Franchising on LinkedIn. I follow you guys.
If you go on 5-Star Franchising on LinkedIn, you could do that, or you could 5starfranchising.com. There's a way to connect through me through that website as well. But really, probably LinkedIn's the best way.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, thank you.